Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to SP Reviews, where today I'll be reviewing an EP from an act named Jody Ellis titled Dissonant Vibrations. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves the EP on the screen. There are 5 tracks going from Vexed through to Nemesis. You can currently, it's looking to me that you can get the Dissonant Vibrations EP for $7.77 if you're interested in buying the album after listening through it. And we're going to listen through each of these tracks though from start till finish. And we're going to hear what we think. Starting with Vexed, number 2, which is the first, because the first track on this is the actual whole entire EP itself, with Vexed being the first. So let's go. Great rain foley. Oh. That's actually quite dramatic, isn't it? It actually kind of slaps. We gotta stop. We gotta pause for a moment to appreciate the amount of work and effort that's been, gone into this. To start with the rain foley, to have the strings, those interesting arpeggios on the guitar with the parallel major chord in there, the triad there that I was not expecting there. I think it kind of accents it really nicely. It kind of gives sort of a weirdness to it, but it's kind of almost, how do I describe it? Kind of reminds me of some of the video game soundtracks I heard from like adventure games and stuff back in the day. It's kind of dope. I think that that bass line is filthy, man. I love the way it oscillates, especially in the drop and the drums as well, with the cymbals. Oh, and it continues. Fantastic synth lines. Fantastic portamento on those lines there at the end. Strings with a slow attack. Fantastic as the use of a pad. Oh yeah, no, that's fantastic with those lady vocals. The choir in the background. And simmering back down. Almost a spiritual experience, isn't it? No, fantastic use of those really flush sort of neo-soulish kind of 7th pads there. I love the choir vocals coming in there to kind of elevate it in the latter half there. I was already fascinated by the use of those really kind of fuzzy, slick sounding synth lines with the bass and the drums and the guitars there, and the variation amongst the string parts, may I add. But it's just a very nice touch as well to have those vocals coming on top as a final sort of out. And we have the natural crescendo of the bell curve to then go back down at the end there to line lead us out there with some of the rain foley, but still a bit more music and we're done. And it's a fantastic first impression to this Vexed. Vexed, it kind of sounded like we were working through something like we were on the start of our mission, but I don't know where we're headed, and we're going to find out with Reckoning, track number 2. What do we got? So lush with these different electronic layers. Great use of double kicks as well, actually. Fantastic sub-bass resonance as well there. What I will also give a mention to is the fact that we seem to have these rises. They come in and out and they oscillate. These attacks and decays. The wow, wow. We kind of did that with the previous track Vexed as well. I like that it kind of harkens the start of a new meter and then towards the end of the second. It's good. It's good sound design. And I think that really when you got so many people making music nowadays and trying to make a name for themselves, to be able to just put that much attention to detail, even into sub-layers, is just a fantastic thing. It's really great, really positive first impression of Jody Ellis's work. I'm looking forward to see what we have next. What I also want to give a shout out to is the fact that we could have very easily have had distorted guitars here. I didn't. But we didn't. We stuck with electric synthesizers. I think that's a really classy move. It's unexpected, especially with the double kick drums and everything like that. It's a different sort of style. There might be a lot of music in this type of genre, I'm not sure, but I haven't heard a lot like this, and I do think it's a great direction to go in. Especially if you want to differentiate yourself. I mean, it's very simple. It's rolling off the root note. Maybe even of the key, but still. And just letting that roll over you, that resonance in the mid-range with the headphones. Fantastic studio production. And this is captivating. We're familiar with it. No, that's mad impressive. That's great. Yeah, I liked the fact that we only had a dominant lead layer sometimes. I think that sometimes you can have too much of a good thing. That kind of sort of synth up idea was great. I think there are stylistic consistencies, including the lack of a dedicated distorted rhythm guitar, a track which might necessarily benefit from the distortion here. We refrained from that. I'm wondering if we'll get that later on. But regardless, it's heavy as hell, fascinating, Lots of tonal diversity there and really nice coloration overall. The Reckoning, it did kind of sound like we were going into battle to sort something out. It's interesting. I suppose we got Vexed and then we were Reckoned. We were going for the Reckoning, right? Not sure about Gabriel though. Track number 3. What have we got next? More theatrical cinematic elements. I like how I can kind of get lost and lose track of the tempo or the time signature. Ooh, flat second. There we go. Kind of reminds me of the Doom soundtrack, the Doom 2016 game. I mean, it's just charming. You have that natural build, and it hangs a bit, comes back down again. Dynamic range. I love that the flat second. There's so much drama to it. And that's it, we're in and out. Such a short track as well. Like, none of these tracks are sleeping around. There's no filler. There is absolutely no filler in these. And it sounds like I'm being just quite positive about this. I urge you to understand that I'm not here to be positive. I'm here to review a song. And I don't even think I'm allowed to give positive reviews, you know? You can't promise positive reviews. So when I say that it's not like I'm trying to find fault, but I'm also trying to be measured and not show bias. I suppose when I listen to this, I think, how could you possibly improve it? And I'm like, I just don't know how you could really do that. Really, like when you listen to it, you go, hey, that's someone who clearly understands the music theory and composition, knows how to layer and incorporate all these different elements in a way that's really satisfying, makes it sound like more than just a song as an instrumental. You don't need a story in order to be able to get the most out of it or to retain attention. There's enough change and diversity within the composition and arrangement to keep you fulfilled throughout, and that we don't rest on our laurels, and the tracks are short enough so that even if you do get kind of used to a theme, it's gone before you get there. So it's like, it's just well balanced, you know? You got Legacy track number 5. If it goes to that one next, I assume it will. Yeah, Legacy 5. See how it just pumps without a short attack to it? Kind of sounds like it could be a drum bass track. Just also want to give a shout out to being able to get those sounds to gradually kind of rise like that. It's not an easy thing to do. It may sound simple, but it's not just putting in a plug-in. It's not just finding a preset and pressing the key and it just rises on its own. There's a little bit more to it than that. There's some automation of the volume and stuff like that. It's attention to detail. Oh, and the drums return. contrast to the rhythms with the whole note to everything else. Digital synth lead on top, whole tone. But I will say it's very loud. Really pushing the limiter, I think. I'm just trying to sort of like get the album together though, to be fair. So after Gabriel, was Gabriel like the final boss after the Reckoning, and the Legacy is what comes after it? Is it chronological? Yeah, good. A little bit of extra activity with those double kicks as well. I wonder if we're playing the drums there. Like, I wonder if we're actually playing the drums. Not that I mind, of course. I'm not going to get all kind of pedantic and kind of like, oh, it's not real drums unless you play them. But like, I wonder if we are actually like playing on like an electronic drum kit, or whether we're like keying them in, or like this is an acoustic drum kit that's been mic'd up. Because these days with the technology, you just don't know. It's very hard to tell, especially if it's done well. Neither any of the three situations, to be honest. We're just going back to that almost heartbeat, that constant pulsing, the writhing there of the Legacy, the thing twisting and twirling and continuing forward. It's great. That's just the dynamic range, the bell curve there. Again, we're going in, starting with that dum 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 with the little kind of delay tail on it. You know, bring it up. Some parts of that track were very, very loud. Like the limiter, which is the final stage of the mastering process usually, which has a ceiling. You push the gain up to get as close to that ceiling and beyond it to the point where it does an artifact, or you want it as loud as you need it, basically, the very short of it. We were really pushing that. I think that's great, because we had quite quiet parts, and you can do that. You can have that change in perceived loudness, and it can be very effective. It was done well here. We've earned it. It was more like a movie soundtrack, really, than anything else, which, given the art here, given the overall themes and stuff like that, I would suggest that this person, if they're not doing stuff for films, making soundtracks, doing that kind of stuff, please do. It's dope. It's really good tunes. Really great stuff. You know, that's just another 3-minute 40 track that felt like 4 seconds. Gradual development there with Legacy before I finish. I really just enjoyed how much of a relative kind of like, we had like the ABA structure there. We'd have like the and then we'd have like this, so the whole note rhythmed, or like the 2-bar held kind of portamento, kind of legato notes. And then, you know, what we would do is we'd like stack stuff on, but there was constant 16ths otherwise. And it just, the contrast there rhythmically was very fascinating. But yeah, Nemesis, let's go. What have we got for the final track off of the EP? Again, there is real dissonance within the intro, especially. I thought if I clicked that, it would highlight the track. Oh, that's a hella sexy tone to those synth leads. Very cyberpunkish, you know. Great range there. Wasn't expecting that turn with the percussion. Oh, we're doing a shorter last half to that previous part. That was a sassy guitar solo, by the way. Don't worry, I wasn't sleeping on that. It was very subtle, like it wasn't the main layer. It was kind of writhing underneath like a very angry snake dancing over a fretboard. But what I will say is that it was a very zazzy solo. The note choices were good. We had some melodica, harmonic minor stuff going on there. It was very exotic sounding and kind of dangerous, as if we were in a battle with our Nemesis. Nemesis was someone we hadn't encountered before. Yep, great. Great to have a percussive focus here. Return of the choir synths, choir vocals. See, how did we just sift in that much color there in the harmonies? It was that sort of drum focus with the toms and the kicks and stuff like that. Very little cymbals. And now we're at a point, we've got these overlapping vocal takes there, highlighting a lot of what was going on with the earlier synth bits. It's just the transfers between the elements, the builds and dips are just very, very good. Yeah, and snapping back into it. Great way to finish an EP. Damn, I'm actually really surprised by this. I'm pleasantly surprised. The reason I say that is because I'm not always sure what to take in. Hang on a minute. I've just realized that I could have had it like this the entire time. I apologize. I could have had it bigger the entire time. So if you go to Jody's website, well, it's under construction at the moment, as I understand it. I'm seeing like a pre-version of it, but yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good stuff. And welcome to the conclusion of my review of this EP, Dissonant Vibrations from Jody Ellis. What do I think this EP is about? I would say the Dissonant Vibrations is an inference to there being a struggle, a battle that is going on that needs to be either completed or attended to at the very least in order to be able to reduce the dissonance that is occurring there. And I think that the track, they acknowledged it well. There were some spiritual elements with the choirs there. I mean, obviously there was a lack of vocals aside from the choir parts, but when they did come in, a sense of spirituality and brightness and sense of makes it almost mythical, you know? The guitar lines where they were there were not like your down-tuned sort of run-of-the-mill kind of rhythm riffs. They were interesting, arpeggiated lead lines there. They were double-tracked, or there was some shred stuff like went on Nemesis in the background there. The guitars were extra coloration in mid to high ranges, with the bass nice and low and very thick and authoritative in the low end there, with a bit of buzz and a bit of crackle and a bit of hiss and a bit of attitude to it. That really did kind of cut through the mix in a really satisfying way. Of course, we had some clean string parts there, we had some softer elements, but the drums as well, when the drums were there, they were punchy. They had lots of variety there with the 8th, 16th, maybe some triplet parts or some 16th triplets. There were some of the fills there. But it's just, they managed to stay in sync so well with the bass lines at the same time. You know, like we clearly could play the percussion. We clearly had the chops to be able to do a lot more with it. Same with the guitar, to be honest, given we only had one solo, but we had a really eloquent lead phrasing there. It was obviously a deliberate decision to not have more than that one sort of main solo part. And I have to give them some love for that. I genuinely do, because I think, you know, how could you improve this by adding more instruments? You probably couldn't have. There's a lot of different layers, like the various sort of synth layers, and obviously the guitar lines, the bass, the drums, etc. The choir on top, pitched in that high end. But it's just a really lovely arrangement of elements. I mean, like, the instrumental choices were similar as we went through here. We did stick to, again, sort of like synth arps, synth pads, synth sequences, their bass sequences. There was dynamic range to it as well, so things weren't the same loudness all the time. We had dips and tros here. We really pushed the track sometimes. Other times we came back a little bit and kept things nice and quiet, and I think that was a smart idea, because you don't want to have everything the same loudness or the same energy the entire time. Listeners will sign off, even if it's really, really fantastic at its base value. I think there wasn't too much of a departure from the overall sort of stylistic inferences from one track to another, simply to allow a sense of connection between the various elements within this instrumental EP, and I think that in itself was smart, because if we'd been too sort of crazy with the note choices or the kind of texture or timbre choices here, I might have alienated the listener. They might not have even necessarily known if they listened to the same person. So I think, you know, this is a smart way to do an EP. You have 5 ideas for tracks that are similar enough that you can group them together and go, oh, that is easily identifiable as a Dissonant Vibrations EP. But you kind of have it so that they're not all the same at the same time, so that you're not sitting there wondering why you even bother listening to it in the first one track. 5 tracks, when you could have just listened to one. There's clear skill on the drums. You know, regardless of whether we're like writing them or like playing them, there's clear skill. With knowing the different drum grooves and various choices to play in, and we didn't keep it complicated the entire time, but we knew to speed it up when we needed to, and vice versa. And I think, again, with the bass lines, you know, with the relative simplicity of some of those bass lines and the chord progressions, it's more about the way we layered the different instruments within the mix that really made the arrangement special. It's about the intricacy of the different sort of ebbs and flows of it. We didn't have one instrument doing all the heavy lifting. We allowed various other layers, and that's a difficult thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do, to just say, hey, I want to have like 12 instruments. I want them to do different things and they all need to match. You need to have a fundamental understanding of music theory and composition to be able to pull this off, which I think is what Jody does. And I think that it was really, really well done. I think that it sounded commercial grade, and we were not at the studio production yet. But I think, again, if they're not looking at doing stuff for movie soundtracks or game soundtracks or something, they absolutely should, because they're really good at it and they've got an knack for it. And I hope they can, you know, regardless of whether they do more stuff like this, you know, more EPs like this, you know, whether or not they do more sort of like stuff with like movie soundtracks or whatever, it doesn't matter to me. It's just very satisfying watching them, knowing that they've made this music and that it sounds as connected as it does. There's a great synergy between the various elements there. They did sound relative, you know, there was transitions between the tracks that sounded nice and smooth. And we just had 5 bell curves, which were well attended to. We didn't overstay our welcomes with any of them. They were nice and short. And, you know, while we did play around different scale shapes, we didn't overcomplicate the harmonies either, relying sort of on majors and minors for the most part. And I think that was a smart idea too. We really played to our strengths. We knew that the arrangement was complicated, so adding different extra sort of tonal complexity to the other elements individually, as I mentioned, wasn't going to go. So I understand how the tracks were made. I think that my favorite track off of it was probably Nemesis. I just really liked how that lead solo was done there. I liked that we got the payoff of waiting for the guitars to come into it. After the first few tracks having relatively little to no guitars there, even though that heaviness, that sort of sizzle of distortion tones probably would have suited them very, very, very well. And I think that in itself is impressive, that we had that restraint there to give the listener something that they can enjoy at the end for getting through the EP. There's an obvious payoff there. But I think it's also making music that's good enough for the person to want to wait in the first place. So if you're into stuff about like big fantasy battles, sort of like spiritual kind of like warfare and stuff like that, anything that you heard in this track today, please do go listen to this EP without me pausing it via the links in the description. But anyways, now on to the studio recording, mixing and mastering. I think that it sounded commercial grade. I think that the choir vocals sound nice and fresh and sort of out of this world with the reverb and how kind of holy they sounded there. It was wonderful. But we also had, again, the guitars, which are nicely filtered and EQ'd and distortion, and was very pleasurable. The bass lines were big and thick and sizzled and now are nice and bombastic. The drums nicely balanced and punchy within the mix there. And all the other synths, arpeggiators, any other instruments there. Any bits of Foley, like with Vexed, with like the rain, for example. We had rain Foley, which was dope, you know. We paid very close attention to not only making this a song, but also making this an experience. I think that's part of why Foley can be really dope if you use it correctly. We did. It was used correctly. We had nice, reasonable length tracks that kind of, you know, we moved forward on it, and it was great. And I don't think we could have done anything differently with the other instruments in the arrangement. I mean, they were nicely stacked within the frequency spectrum with no resonant frequencies, and things were nice and wide in the stereo field. Things were leveled nicely, and there was still dynamic range. You know, things weren't the same loudness all the time, which I really appreciate. And, you know, it was nice now with our pumping, so limiting compression was sorted. And I guess that is that. The Dissonant Vibrations EP from Jody Ellis. This is my review of this EP, and hopefully enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via their various social medias and their website, and stay cool and stay safe. And please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need all the help more than ever at this point in time with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next review. Spiderhands out.